everybody, it's James from the On Whose Shoulders podcast. Welcome. Today we're going to have a guest named Doug Payne. Doug is from Miracle Bible Camp, and he's going to tell us a lot of great insights about smaller camps specifically and how they worked and how they've gone through the years. And so I sure hope you enjoy this time with Doug on the podcast today.
Howdy, I'm James. I'm the director at Trout Lake Camps, and welcome to our podcast on Whose Shoulders. This is my friend Doug, and
Greetings.
Greetings. Doug has been at Miracle Bible Camp for lots of years, and the first time I met you, I don't think it was the first time I realized who you were as a person, was actually when we were on the cabinet of CCCA Minnesota section together.
Oh, you were teaching me to be a secretary.
And I think I was on it, and then you came pretty quickly in my first term way back. Is that where you were first secretary?
I think so.
Wow.
Or government relations, I don't know.
Yeah, I got started in government relations, then went to accounting, and then I had to get out of accounting because I'm now good at that. But that's when our friendship kind of peaked, and you've been huge in my career as the guy that has the camp that I can go hide at. So when I need to escape, you find me a Jeep to drive around on trails and just let me go hide in one of your buildings.
Yep.
But tell us about Miracle.
It helps to be close to you too.
Yeah.
30 miles away.
Yeah, not too far away.
Yeah.
Tell us about Miracle, how it started, but there's a pretty interesting start to Miracle.
Well, the name Miracle was after they bought the property. They said, "What do we name it?" And it's like, well, God made it happen, so I guess it's a miracle. So
because prior it had been
way back in like 1969, is when they bought. But before that, they'd been leasing and renting Camp Grindstone, believe it or not.
Oh wow, I didn't know it was a Grindstone.
And so the churches that were called Northern Gospel Mission was that we got to do something to reach the youth. Camps are a great vehicle. Camps are work for reaching the youth of our churches. So let's do camp ministry. So the pastors got together, and they were running camp at Camp Grindstone for a few years. Mm-hmm. Then they were able to buy this camp up in Side Lake, Minnesota in 1969, and they talked about how much money they could pay. It was a leased piece of property from the state. So they talked about how much they could pay, and it was, I think, 4 cabins, a dining hall, and a chapel. It had been on this little lake for years, since like the 20s, and they said, oh man, we might be able to come up with $5,000. And it was offered to them for $5,000.
Wow.
So now you have to know it was outhouses, and you could see through the walls of the shiplap cabins, but it had great sand shore and had this is Finlander country, so it had the biggest, and I'll say it wrong, sauna, that, big, huge 40-person, big, huge opportunity to get hot and then jump in the lake.
Yep.
And that was the first start in 1969 of Miracle.
And then when did you start to be involved with Miracle?
Well, my dad was one of those pastors that was leasing from Grindstone, and then got in on one of the purchases and all that good stuff. So I don't really remember the first time I was involved, because my mom was the cook and I got drug along as the little kid.
Oh, wow.
So I don't remember that part. But when did I do remember going along, so it'd be Sunday afternoon, load up everybody after church, go to camp. They're going to camp for the week. Mm-hmm. And so I'd ride along. Now, that works great, except for that's also how I got to be a camp counselor one time.
Okay.
I was barely older than the kids, and they needed a camp counselor.
Yep.
That's what you're it.
Threw you in a cabin.
Yeah, threw you in a cabin.
And it went well, went great, went terrible?
I don't remember much about it.
Okay.
So it must have gone good.
It must have been something. Yeah. Okay. So
I copied the devotions that the counselor that I had when I was in the 3rd grade.
All right.
I copied those devotions.
So you didn't work there in college or anything like that?
I did not. In high school, I went to the farm in Kansas and worked with my grandpa.
Wow.
So
okay. So you weren't on that college age high school staff?
None.
Then how did you end up coming back?
Well, that's interesting. I was working in Colorado after college for 9 years, and came back on vacation, and they said, our camp is not sure what to do with it. It's on leased land. The director's getting old. What are we going to do? We need somebody. And I had been doing youth group out at church in Colorado and running a treatment center for Penrose Hospital. And I said, oh, that'd be kind of fun. I've done mission trips with our youth group and had done to the, what camp did we get to? I think we'd been to Idrahaji as a youth group. And there was one in Castle Rock. I can't remember the name. And we'd used those camps as a youth leader. And then because camp was a great tool in my childhood. And so I said, well, maybe I should be the camp director for a while. It'd be a nice switch from being in the treatment center world.
Yeah. Now, let's stop on treatment center world for a minute. You were a counselor. What was your role with at that location?
I was the counselor, and we ran a halfway house and then a 30-day treatment program from adolescent drug and alcohol for Penrose Hospital.
Wow. And then you go from that pretty intense day to day?
Well, camp's pretty intense day to day.
Okay. And then you come to Miracle as what position?
Well, there was only one position. It's like, you are it.
Yep.
You're the director.
You're the director.
Yeah.
Which involves everything from...
Well, I didn't know what I was getting into, really. I mean, I arrived in April. Camp started in June.
What year is this?
1993, I think.
93, okay.
And I learned that you had to hire the staff fast. You didn't have a cook. And boy, it's a good thing we didn't know everything when we got involved.
Yeah.
It's because my wife probably wouldn't have come with me. So.
How many beds at the time at Miracle?
Maybe 40.
40?
50?
Okay.
I have to think. There was 4 cabins.
Okay. How many beds are at Miracle when you left? Retired.
For summer, a couple years ago, for summer, there was 120.
Okay, so you really grew it in that time, but you're one of those kind of smaller camps.
Very much.
And you've kind of stayed in that small range.
Yep.
But your staff eventually has kind of grown. But go back to the surprise of going from where you were in Colorado to being in Minnesota. You knew the camp because you were there when you were a kid.
Right.
But now you're in charge of it. That's got to be a pretty huge moment.
Well, worked for a very large nonprofit hospital in Colorado Springs, Penrose Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to, you are this paid staff, and, you get a house and $500 a month was paid staff.
Yeah.
So it's like paid. So
barely paid, yeah.
So, but it was great. I mean, the influence you have to shape things. We were the first summer, I brought some standards that it's like having worked with kids and the insurance world, for consistency to hire staff, even if they're small paid, you have them for the whole summer. And the summer was like 6 weeks, I think, or something like that. It wasn't, it was 150 people a summer or something like that. It was not huge.
But as that solo guy, you're the maintenance guy, you're the program guy, you're the accounting guy.
And you get to go get groceries on Saturday too.
So no deliveries.
They didn't even have delivery going at that time.
So you're going to the grocery store, buying groceries to feed the people for the week or the weekend.
Yep.
Wow.
It was just like, it was a shock for us. Yes. My wife and I would go, what did we get into here? It's like, and I thought I was going to just help the camp for 5 years and get it stable and then move on.
Yeah.
Back to counseling or something like that.
Yeah.
That didn't work. 31 years later, I was still there. So,
wow.
But not at that facility. We changed.
Yeah. What year did you guys change facilities?
We moved from that leased piece of property. It was 5 acres leased, beautiful up on the Iron Range of northern Minnesota, to our current location down in central Minnesota in 97.
Okay.
So 120 acres. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like we had a big deal paying $5,000, and the lease had gone up to being $5,000 a lease a year at that point.
So when you started in that job, coming from a different background, how did you know what to do? Is it because you'd seen it run before? Because you called somebody and said, "Hey, where do I get groceries?" How did you put all the pieces together, or was it really just a blank slate completely, and you had to figure it out as you went?
there was a couple local churches that had, volunteers that would give you information. The past director was the Christian school teacher in a town an hour away. So I talked him into meeting me every Wednesday, and I'd have a list of questions. So it's like,
Wow.
Gene, wow, where's the keys for this? Or all this other stuff. So, and
then as you started to, is the right word, modernize the system?
I changed things.
As you started to change the system, what were the early changes that you made?
Well, having paid staff was big. Having food service come and deliver things was big. Changing the price of the week.
So for your camp, that would have been a big deal.
Raising money was a big deal.
Because you're known, even now, Miracle's known as one of the least expensive camps, the kind of cost-effective. Thank you. That's the better way to say that. The cost-effective camps. That must have been, I mean, when Trout asked to raise the rates 5%, 4%, $5, I'm assuming in your setting, when you're trying to get $2 more a camper,
pushback, you think?
There's way more pushback, right?
I think there was, but that's one of the things I learned having worked at nonprofit hospital. I can still remember the sign that got brought in over my desk because I would get to give away, 30 days or weeks of counseling to teenagers. And my boss at the hospital brought me a sign and put it over my desk. And it said, "No margin, no mission." And it's like, I've carried that with me. Just because we're nonprofit doesn't mean we don't have bills and we have to pay them.
Yeah.
And so I did bring a more businessy side to camp. Not just church gets to just be all 100% donation.
Uh-huh.
Camp has some operational business model that you have to put in there too.
And was that part of the shock of those early days, those middle days?
It was definitely the shock. It was changing the culture.
Wow. I never thought of that. So what changed from your beginning times there to that mid years of kind of knowing what to do, knowing what to expect, starting to get more staff around you? What was the big change?
Significant things in the Miracle history of my 30 years have been related to the place, where we did it. The first 4 years of me being in Miracle were on that leased property. And that whole time was trying to figure out, can we buy this lease so that we can do some significant improvements? Having outhouses, having things that, the kitchen was barely functional and it shouldn't have been grandfathered in.
Yeah.
Those things need to change to make it a safer, more attractive setting. So we worked really hard to get the lease to be a purchase. And then when that was making opposition and not working, started looking for other locations.
And so it's a huge step buying that first property or that second property.
That was a huge step. We were the smallest client that the Timothy Group out of Michigan had ever had.
Okay, what did Timothy Group do?
They came in and were a consultant to us and said, do you have the capacity, what do you need? Who are your strengths in your organization? And do you have the capacity to raise money to buy another camp?
So when you got to the other camp, was it a relief or no, what have I done now kind of a thing?
It was probably more, well, what have I done now? Because we had to pay, because we bought it with, I believe, $100,000 down, and we owed $160,000. Now, you're buying another camp, and it needed a ton of repair. The one we currently have. But it was 120 acres, and it had a dining hall that worked.
Now, the fun thing about what you got yourself into there is you then were the builder as well, the repairer as well. Now, you had some people around you, but I almost every time I've come to Miracle, you're standing somewhere with a hammer or on the way to some. You seem to always have the ability to not just be the director, but be in the work that's going on as well.
As smaller camps, you get involved.
Yeah.
And they let you, even if you don't know things, get involved. But it is interesting how God brings about things in your past and makes them things that you need to know now.
Yeah.
When I was in high school and in college, I worked with a local contractor. And then in college, I worked with a roofer. So all these construction skills came back. At least I knew enough. when I was way over my head, but at Miracle.
So how long did it take to start to do the improvements you wanted to do on the new property?
We had to balance paying the mortgage and making improvements. So we had to, like right when we got there, we had to bring the kitchen up to code, and we had to spend money as much as you just want to pay it off fast, because I hate interest.
Yeah.
But you have to balance that, and so it was very good. It re-energized people's excitement about camp to have a new facility to work on. It's a great place for volunteers to plug in. Volunteers make, especially small camp, happen, especially in the building trades.
Yeah. So then you're building a camp. Now, what was there? Was it a family resort that you purchased?
It was
It
was an actually church camp, and the church ran it just for their camp. It was just for their church.
Just for like 1 week of summer kind of thing?
It didn't look like it'd been used much. There was a lot of moss growing on the backboards of the places that kids should be playing, hadn't been played with for a while.
Wow. But your clientele came with you, your campers came with you, your churches came with you.
Well, that's your hope. We moved south 120 miles.
Oh.
So that's a lot of it. A lot of the campers and constituency did. We still have a northern Minnesota flavor.
Yep.
But a lot didn't. I mean, that's not in our backyard anymore. So then you had to kind of start with the community.
And then the new property is a little landlocked, right?
Well, it's dead end, kind of nicely secluded on the lake shore. You got a quarter mile of lake shore and 120 acres, and it's on a dead end road that's got a couple other resorts beside it. And
so how much has that property grown? You said, from 40 beds to 80 beds?
Oh, that property has 120 beds on it. But the key is, because we're going to be small, they are all winterized. They're handicap accessible. Very nice flushers and showers and things like that. But it took a few years for that to happen.
How long was it that you started before you could start to build your staff up? Because, you've been retired a couple of years now.
2 years, yeah.
When you left, there was four?
There's four
staff?
4 full-time staff, and then you hire a dozen, 10 to 12 summer staff. Yeah.
Okay.
And you get another 20, 30 good teen volunteers. It's fun to see them growing. And
never associated with a group of churches, always fairly independent?
It's non-denominational.
Yep.
And so that means you don't have a denomination funding you, but you have several churches that you're connected to. You go around, and just like a denomination church, that's our camp. The parents come use the camp for women's retreat, or the guys come at January guys retreat, and so it's their camp, but it's not the denomination.
So when I think of the smaller camps that have done well, like Miracle, that I think of, man, they're more than likely specialized. They've got a niche. They've got something that they're just doing well. What is Miracle's niche that's kept it going for so long?
Yeah. What is our niche? I think because we're able to give such personal attention, that has really been an advantage to us. We have a great setting. You're on the lakeshore. God's creation gets your attention there. It's beautiful big pine trees and on the lakeshore. But lots of our Minnesota camps are that way. But then, because we are so small, you can know everybody's name the first day they come to camp.
Yeah.
Kids, there's 60 kids show up on Monday, and you can hand out a soda to a kid that can tell you every kid's name by supper time.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
That is
pretty
cool.
Us as staff may not know everybody's name, but we can say hi.
But the campers feel like you do, though.
Oh, yeah. I can come close and know quite a few of them, but...
Was there big changes programmatically in the way that camp started versus what it did, when you left a couple of years ago? How did the programming in that model adjust over the years?
Well, we didn't have a big, huge sauna like we did up on Finlander countries.
Oh, no sauna. So that was a big deal, and that's gone.
That's a big deal. And no fancy sand beach and diving board and things like that. We still have a swim beach and all that, but it wasn't as cool as the one on the way up North Lee.
So it started as a downgrade?
It's the beach was, but having the space, you get to do things like way bigger lake and sailboats and speedboats. And, from program wise, the new facility offered us, a ton more space, a lot more privacy without neighbors right next, 100 feet away from your camp property, and year-round buildings right away. We got to start doing some things in the winter, warm dining hall that was winterized right away, first year.
Oh, wow. And that's something you'd never had before. So you're starting up retreats and in rentals?
And rentals. See, you never did rentals before. If you'll notice in the brochures of Miracle, for the first 15 years, I rarely had buildings in the pictures. There wasn't anything to show off. You had people, loving on people, and connections around campfires and things like that. So the last 15 years, we started showing buildings that were improving.
And your buildings seem to be very focused on multi-use, multi-abilities, can do family camp, can do campers, can do, tell me about how those decisions went into play.
Well, you're being very cost effective and frugal, but that way the dining hall can have a space for it to be the chapel if you need to be. And this cabin is also built with a space so that it could be a breakout room. And, this cabin's got abilities for a group of 25 to cook their own meals, because it doesn't get very cost effective to make meals for a group of 15. And, it's thinking of all the options of how we can use that cabin became important when we were building.
Now, as a counselor, what do you think you brought a different mindset to camping as the leader with that counseling background, with that training and mindset?
I'm sure I did.
What did that look like? I mean, did that affect how you trained your staff? Did that affect how you dealt with problems? How did that work?
Well, it probably affected how I dealt with problems. It meant that we have probably had a fair number of kids with some of those initials behind their name. Did you know that lots of times a psychologist intentionally takes them off their ADHD meds for the summer?
Yep.
Well, camp's a fantastic place for that kid to burn that energy in a positive way. So I know that I don't know if I put it on our brochure, please send them here, but we did a fair number of active kids, shall we say.
Yep.
And it's fun. I like that. I'd rather direct the energy than come up with, come on, do something, than create energy. So I know that we got more patience, and it didn't scare us away to have a lot of initials behind their diagnosis and things like that.
And it does feel like in the modern day camping, there's more kids coming with different issues, or even we find that some kids that are sometimes we're having issues with at camp, we ask them how many camps they've been to this summer, and I've been to 3 and I'm going to 3 more, kind of thing, where the kids are spending a lot of time bouncing between camps and stuff like that. But from your chair, much better at figuring out how to get through those issues than from my chair, probably.
I went around to the local counties, and I offered to the social workers, so I had some connections with the social workers at the different counties. So, when you talked to Price earlier, kids came to camp whether they could pay or not. And that's still the tradition. And it means it's your job to raise the money to make it happen.
So part of the specialization of your camp is that leans very hard into anybody can come from anywhere in any situation. We're going to get them on our grounds. What I find weird is a bigger Trout like camp would say the same thing, but it feels like the smaller camps get the most traffic there. Do you have any idea why?
It's more personal, maybe. Maybe there's more people involved because you're doing the fundraising banquets and you're doing the garage sales type things. I don't know exactly why, because I know that Chaminade and Trout Lake, you come regardless of funds.
Yeah.
But more people think that, that's a big deal at the little camp.
Yep.
Maybe it's because they see you don't have a whole lot of resources and you're still giving it away. I don't know.
or maybe it's knowing there's that more personal touch,
I think
or that reputation of that.
Maybe that's it.
Huh.
And I love that part of it, being non-denominational and being every kid comes regardless of funds.
what percentage of your campers are in that ballpark?
There were times, I can only speak a couple of years ago, where, we're 40%, of the kids, and we're up to 350, 400 kids, that you're giving away.
Wow. So how do you fundraise that?
Well, I asked Trout Lake for money. No, I didn't. You just very generous people. First of all, our fee is less, and you pay speakers. Your speakers are the local camp pastors, and you don't have some of the high bill activities, but you pay for it typically by very generous volunteers. I mean, the grandparents that say, I don't have any more kids going to camp, but you can send a kid for $250 a week. Here's send 2 kids, or, I don't know what you need, but it's always a great investment to invest in kids to go to camp.
Now, when you're following those kids through their time at camp, are they almost always you're finding the funds for them as they go through the system, or do some of those kids end up coming back on being on staff, or how does that kid
how do we track that?
No, not just track it, but how do you watch the kids go through your system in light of that they started out as a 100% scholarship?
I would say a lot of that changes. They want to pay. If you look at family budgets, they're tight. You have 3 or 4 kids, and $250 a kid's a lot of money. But usually, you always give the opportunity. We'll do half, we'll do full. We'll do 75%, and you give them the opportunity. It always goes better if they have some skin in the game. So rarely, do you lead off with, when I said 40%, that they're usually at least doing the deposit, $50, and they have some skin in the game, and then they might work their way down. But
so when you have to raise the rates because food costs go up, do you feel a more responsibility to that than maybe a medium or bigger size camp?
I don't know if you'd feel more. I can only speak, that just means that you'll have to come up with more funds. But as food costs go up, food's a fairly easy one. I always like to go over on the food because that just meant there was more people there. I like that. If you're going to go over on any line item on the budget, go over on food, because it means you had more people.
Or probably food's not, insurance is probably the one that gets us all.
People don't notice that, they don't know as much about that one, but food, everybody knows milk and eggs went up in the last few years.
So going from that middle time in your camping to when you retired, you guys were able to gain staff, improve facilities drastically. What was that change like, that time like in being a camp?
Just as a director, it's fun to have a staff. I like the community. I like, building into people. I like growing the facility. People come and they're excited to see the change. The purpose is still always the same. The purpose is still share the gospel, get people into God's word, and let them enjoy God's great creation. The philosophy has been the same at Miracle. You're still just relational, trying to be personal attention, and hiring the right people. The kids, you could have the fantastic camp, and who they remember? Their counselor. They remember their counselor's name. They could have a wonderful camp speaker, and they don't even know who their name is. So we spend a lot of time on the place, but really the kids remembered their counselor's name, and when they met Jesus, and I was out on the dock there, or remember when we took the night hike and looked at the stars, or that type of stuff. Or campfire donuts are always a good hit too.
I know in the latter years before you retired, it was hard for Miracle to find that person. Was it hard to hand off to somebody this so many years invested, whether you were the guy making the building or fundraising the building, or was it hard handing this entity over to the next leader? Was that a difficult moment?
It wasn't a moment, for one thing. I have been saying to high school campers, you are the next camp leaders, you're the next missionaries, you are the next pastors in our churches. So, constantly having the mindset of replacing yourself. Back when I worked at the hospital, the bosses would come in and say to me, Doug, we'd like to have you go start this. I started an outpatient program, and halfway, we'd like to have you do that, but you can't do that till you hire your replacement. And that was good training, because to duplicate yourself is the mindset you have to be thinking about. What's the next people going to do? With that said, I'll answer yes.
Yeah.
It's hard. My wife go, don't you just pull out the driveway and just think you should use, mind brain, drive to camp, It's 7 a.m, go to camp, It's like, no. So yes,
Are you still getting those calls? Hey, how does this work? Hey, how does that work 2 years later? Or is that calmed down a little bit? Like the people that helped you when you started?
I still am happy to take those calls from our director, and the maintenance guy will call and say, where's this? And the board can call.
Yep.
We worked on a succession transfer plan for a couple of years before, and then overlapped by 4 months. And so it's like, and it's different because I still live in the community and I can still answer the phone, but I have stayed totally visual to any guests or any campers. It's like I can go do something in the background, but I don't want to distract from the new leadership.
So what do you think will be the upcoming changes? What will Miracle look like 5 years, 10 years from now? What do you see as the trends that are coming in camping?
In camping?
Yeah.
What's interesting is people need to rediscover God's creation.
Yeah.
And rediscover how to have a personal eye-to-eye contact. Kids actually are doing, in my opinion, our high school kids are doing better at putting their phones away and talking than our young adults, our parents that are 30 to 50.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just my impression. I watch family camp and it's like, come on, put your phone away, Mom. It's in the high school kids, they come, they put their phone in the box and they miss it. But it's like they know that's happening.
Yeah. And you guys do a great job. I know Trout copied your nature center, basically every inch of it, when we build ours for our youngest camp.
Yeah.
You guys, that creation piece, that outdoor piece, that's always been a pretty big driver for you guys. You probably got cell phone towers in your area a little slower than we did as well.
Yep. That means your phone doesn't work as good either.
Yeah, it's great. And so that back to nature, back to understanding who God is, piece. Is there anything? Is there any advice that you'd give to people working in camps now in that light?
It's really hard to give away something that you don't personally enjoy.
Oh, that is interesting.
If you can do it. You can learn the curriculum and talk about the squirrels and the ducks and stuff. But that counselor that actually loves being in the woods or loves going canoeing or loves going fishing, and they'll do it for their own enjoyment, boy, they really give it away well. They can really talk about God's creation well.
Huh.
So,
I like that. I like that very much. Yeah. That is the end of this podcast. Thank you so much, Doug, for joining me.
James.
And again, you've been such a huge part of my hanging out at Christian Camp Conference Association events and things, palling around with me there, and being a great place that I can go hide. Oh, we should probably mention.
In order to make it as a small camp, you have to be involved in Christian camping.
For sure.
You really do.
You have one of the most unique camps, which I still got to go to someday, is everybody bringing their Jeeps to winter camp and driving them through the snow and stuff like that.
The deepest snow you can find.
Yep. And so I've still got to come experience of that week.
That's guys camp in the middle of January.
Yep.
That is good fun.
That does sound like good fun. But thanks a lot. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, James.